A lot of things can happen in @page directives. The @control directive determines user control specific attributes, and we're going to look at user controls a little bit later. But this is only used when you're using user controls or using parts of the page as user control. The @import imports a namespace into a page. Now earlier we talked about the .NET framework and how it's divided into the namespaces. Well, the @import is how we expose a namespace and all of the classes in that namespace to a particular web page so that we can write code using those classes. Now, you can only list one namespace attribute per @import statement, but this is not a problem. We just simply use multiple @import statements on our page. Now, when I use the @import statement to import namespaces, I do need to be aware of one thing. A number of .NET framework namespaces are automatically imported on each page just because it's an ASP.NET page. And let's look at those real quickly. There's quite a few of them. System collections, the collection specialized, the system configuration namespace, I/O or input-output namespace, the system text namespace, text regular expressions namespace, and yet there's more. System.web caching, and you can figure out what that one does. The system.web security, obvious there. System.web.session state. UI, user interface, this is where controls come from. UI web controls, we'll look at those later. HTML controls. So there's a lot of those, and those are automatically there. You don't have to import those to use them. Now, @implements, this tells the current page or user control to implement a specified interface. Now, if you know what an interface is, that just told you a lot. If you don't worry about it. Go out in the documentation, do some reading. Notice this will let you declare an interface's events, methods, and so forth in a script block. Now, this will give you quite a bit of power. This cannot be used on the code behind page, however. Just be aware of that. So if any of that made sense, great, run with it. If it didn't, again, go out to documentation. The @register page directive will associate an alias with a namespace and a class name so that you can use different ones on different pages and so forth. @assembly links an assembly to the current page during compilation. Now, assembly is one of those .NET things. An assembly is like a building block. It's one of the smallest building blocks you can use in a .NET framework application. But we can tell our page to link to this page so that we can use that assembly's classes and interfaces on this page, and also during compilation to make sure you include that one as well because we need to use it. Output cache directive. This controls output caching and that whole caching process of writing these pages into memory and then allowing people to grab them quickly. Reference, this links this page to another one during compilation. This tells it when you compile this page, go ahead and compile this other one because I'm going to be using functionality off of that one. Now, we covered a lot of stuff and skipped a lot of stuff. So as you can tell, page directives have an awful lot of power that you can use. Now again, I want to repeat this, and I know I'm repeating myself, but there are a lot of people who have written a lot of lines of code to do things that @page directives would have done for them. They just didn't know they were there. So again, take advantage of these things. You really need to familiarize yourself with the page directives and what they do. In the .NET Framework documentation, you can go out and do a search on page directives. There's some really good information out there, pages and pages of what these things do, some really good descriptions, and I would highly recommend you go check this out and use page directives. They can really give you a lot of functionality with just 1 or 2 lines of code.